Right, good morning from the Noisy River. It is very noisy here. You have a bridge over, and of course, where cars are coming over, and of course, you also have the Neuse River itself. But anyway, um, are you familiar with the term cognate? Cognate is a word from which other words derive. So, for example, anima, meaning spirit. So, animosity, bad spirits towards someone. Animation, to move spiritually. Um, Animus, kind of bad vibes, that type of thing. Uh, well, a false cognate is one where it looks like there's a word, you see a word, and it looks like that a word in another language may derive from it, but it really doesn't. So, what would be a good example of that? Embarazado in Spanish. Um, we would think that would mean embarrassed. Well, actually, embarazado means pregnant. Another one is the word negus, negus. Now, there are people who think that negus is another way of saying, the hip way of saying the N word. The words look similar, but not quite. That less that controversial N word actually comes from, or it comes from Latin roots. It just does. Um, whereas the word negus is Ethiopian, coming from the Amharic, um, if you will, in the 1590s. And matter of fact, there's a surname negus that may actually, European surname that actually may well even predate, if you will, that term. There's several words for it. Well, anyway, um, what I want to get into, speaking of that unfortunate word, the N word, is I'm actually going to go to China here in this conversation. Um, I was so blessed to have, for 2 years, an international student from China. Um, this relates, but anyway, he was from China. Now I say international student as opposed to an exchange student because he wasn't here for 1 year. Um, you know, but rather he was an international student. He came here um, to basically spend 4 years here in order to go to college here and perhaps even pursue a life here, or maybe take back what he knows here back to China. I've also had international exchange students as well, or at least one exchange student. I had one exchange student. But anyway, this is a little different. All right. So at any rate, it was a program where quite a few of these kids came. Oh, and by the way, just in case you're wondering, he is now a freshman at UCLA, by the way. Um, but at any rate, so I had, so I drove around these folks. And actually, I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of miss driving them around. Kind of breaks my heart that that I didn't get to drive around my exchange student more. Kind of miss driving her around, and this fellow too. But anyway, and so I'd drive him around, and he'd obviously have friends, and this was a Chinese program. So, well, so you probably have noticed with me, and I've noticed this as I've reviewed my videos, that I say a lot and, quite a few other things. Well, there's a word, and I believe technically the word may well mean that. Um, it is romanized in two parts. Now, just in case you're wondering what romanization is, um, understand that the alphabet that we know as the English alphabet um, would be known traditionally as the Latin alphabet. And so, so the idea is that, if you were to take something from a language that doesn't use, the so-called Latin alphabet and put it into a Latin alphabet equivalent, This would be known as romanization. So they romanized the word N-E and then G-A. Now, I believe that is pronounced, and maybe someone knows a little better than I do, I believe nega. All right, well, if you're not careful and you keep hearing this word, it may sound a little different, right? Well, so I was driving around my exchange student, international students, and they're talking, and that word kept coming up, right? And so N-E-G-A, 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 and at first, it caught me off guard. I was thinking, well, the fellow never had any animus toward me, so there must be more to this story. Now, I'll also tell you that I believe I might have actually run into this. See, I had this exchange student in 2016 to 2018, I believe. But I think I also ran into this as I was taking maybe one Chinese class with a friend. And I think this was 2003, maybe. So understand, it had been years since I'd run into this, so I'd forgotten all about it. But I kept hearing it, N-E-G-A, N-E-G-A. Now, here's another thing. I'm not one of those African Americans who thinks it's cool for black folks to be using the N-word. I know people like to use the negus excuse, which, it's inaccurate. But I don't, I have an issue with that. I don't want anybody to call me that, black, white, pink, purple, fuchsia. I think it's an ignorant word to use myself, but I know I have friends that use it, and I respect their right to use that word. But with that being said, you can imagine how I feel, as I'm hearing some young people using a word that kind of sounds like it. Now, but anyway, I was like, and I looked it up. It's like, oh, okay, no, it's just a filler word. Now, I will say also in closing, because I just wanted to do a little bit of research on this word. There was an American professor who got suspended for using that very word. He was, I think, a Chinese. He wasn't Chinese himself. He was American, but he taught Chinese, if I'm not mistaken. And he used that word, nega. And people thought that he was saying, the N-word. And so they actually suspended him. So this has some real life implications, if you will. But yeah, that was interesting, because you hear a lot of words that sound so similar, and they don't mean quite what you think they mean, right? It's I'd be driving these young people around the city, and boy, and there's 2 or 3 of them, in there, and they're just breaking out what almost appears to be the N-word. And if you haven't noticed, I'm African American, right? I'm black and stuff, so and they would not have known, they didn't know that it sounds differently here. Well, anyway, thank you, y'all. I kept this under 10 minutes, have mercy. Just thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Hopefully it wasn't too offensive. And so long from Wake County, North Carolina.